Because it just kind of looks like this hard little
kernel of corn.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that makes me kind of cringe.
Welcome back to another episode from the Optimal Body Podcast. I'm Doc Jen.
And I'm Dr. Dom.
And today we're talking about those calluses that form on the bottom of the feet, a lot of times from people who run a lot or they form corns. We're going to talk about the different types, what they are, and what you can do about it. Now, when we're thinking about corns on the bottom of the feet, you might not think that there's like 5 different types that it can be, but we're actually going to talk about the different types and really what you can do to start preventing them. And people we know of what they're doing to really help prevent them as well. Yeah. However, we do want to say that we have so many more episodes on pains, diagnoses, different things that you can do within your body, and just different exercises. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And then just hit that little bell because it's going to help remind you when these episodes are coming out so you continue to learn about your body.
Kind of grosses me out that they're even called corns. I don't know where that term comes up with or came from, but...
Because it just kind of looks like this hard... little
kernel of corn.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that makes me kind of cringe. Basically what they are, they're these hyperkeratotic calluses, and meaning that our foot has just decided to continue to build and build all of this skin and callus tissue in one area, deciding to build up a lot more skin tissue in a certain area because of a repeated pressure or repeated trauma or rubbing or friction that generally comes from our footwear, or we walk a lot every day, and so repetitive trauma because of footwear that we're wearing and rubbing of the fabric or whatever your footwear is made out of on a certain spot can cause our foot to start to have this response.
It's almost a protective nature for your body because it's trying to prevent infections from coming in. The one that people might think of most often is your hard corn. So this is going to be this dry kind of mass that kind of looks a little bit shiny, and it's on usually like the ball of the foot or like the outside of the toes. So again, nature based on the rubbing of your footwear. So if it's really on like the bottom of your feet, the balls of your feet and like the outside of your toes, you can imagine, because they're probably not rubbing from bony prominences inside, is rubbing from the material that it's walking on, or the poor patterning of how you're walking or how you're running or how you're continuing to do this repetition.
And then you have soft corns, which tend to be found more like either on the sides of the foot or on the 4th or the 5th toes. Well, they absorb moisture, which is why they're soft. So they're more prone to having like different bacterial or fungal issues.
And can still be painful. And then you've got seed corns.
Isn't corn a seed already? That's kind of redundant.
Oh, geez.
Seed corn.
Oh, I'm reading into this too much. But it's where you have like these multiple kind of non-painful corns. It's going to be probably the least painful ones, but you have kind of multiple of them on the balls of the feet or the bottom of the feet.
I feel like people who have like clawed toes might often get these when their toes,
when the tips of
your toes are either pressing into the ground, or again, footwear that's too short and your tips of your toes are pressing into that. And then you also have a vascular corn, which is essentially the corn has been there long enough to the point where now the foot or the footwear that you're wearing has forced vasculature, veins and arteries into that corn, and it can cause it to be very inflamed and very painful, actually.
And I guess the most painful one, the fibrous corn. So you now have had this corn go untreated, which I don't recommend. Go see your doctor if you're starting to see this callus forming so much that it's becoming painful, or it's becoming into this corn-like pattern with that central core, because it starts to grow, and it's growing now deeper and kind of buries itself into the tissue.
Yeah, and then we want to chat a little bit about how can we start to get rid of these things.
Yeah.
Like they can turn into and become very painful. Every time you're walking, you're going to have this extreme pain in your foot if it's getting to the point, because essentially that mass, it starts to impede on and press into nerves that are below the corn. The primary things that we would recommend right away is get rid of the stimulus, right? Get rid of whatever it is that is putting that rubbing, putting that consistent friction in those areas.
People who have calluses corns would not ever think to go to Vivo barefoot shoes, right? Because especially if you're getting it like on the bottom of your feet or around the toes, it's like, well, I need more cushion. I need more things. But what is great about the Vivo shoes is that it's not just about a wide toe box, because usually that's still like midfoot that's a little bit wider. It's actually where your toes naturally should lay out. It's wider there.
Doing some toe spacing activities, especially like if it's happening on the toes, like how can you start to grow some more space, and we love the Naboso toe splay. Jen also has posts out there just weaving your socks in between your toes and doing that for like 10 minutes a day. Just anytime you have your shoes off, throw your socks between there, throw one of the Naboso splays on, and that's going to help spread out those toes, give them that kind of passive stretch, so that when you slip them back in the Vivos, they're like, ooh, I have a little more space, and now you're actively using them with some of that extra room that the toe splay may have given you. A little drop for Naboso, use code OPTIMAL. You can go maybe check them out. You get 20% off their toe splay or any of their foot products. They have some really cool foot recovery products.
If you can tolerate and it doesn't create space up, or if it doesn't friction on the sides of your feet, obviously, so that's why I'm saying get maybe a little bit bigger of a shoe. But if you could wear that Naboso inside your shoe, that might be a little bit bigger. It's just going to help, again, to take that pressure between the feet and take the pressure on the outside of the feet off.
And then there's other ways, of course, to like start taking care of this callus, essentially this really intense callus. The really weird thing, this is where my calluses would get really painful, and where it wasn't necessarily corn, but they would be so thick that it would start rubbing and sliding on newer skin that was forming beneath, and it would form like blisters underneath these calluses. And that's where mine got really painful. So he would kind of shave it down to the baby skin, which also is not recommended because, you know, you need that skin to also be able to mature, but starting to slowly shave that down, or doing other things like they would do at a pedicure, like getting agents that are going to start softening up some of these harder corns that you can then scrub down with like a pumice stone. That's something that you could probably start doing at home.
There's things like laser treatments, but this is all stuff to like talk to your doctor about, depending on what they recommend and the severity of the corn, the type of corn that you have. Because if you can just modify with getting better fitting shoes, like that'd be great. Trimming your toenails, making sure that they're not overgrowing and also causing pressure into your shoes or anything like that. So maybe going to get a pedicure if you can afford it, or getting your partner to do one, because Dom has done that for me before.
Not gonna say it was great, but it was.
It was great for me.
The final thing is some of this repetitive stuff can happen because of our walking or our running patterns in itself. And so maybe getting with a PT, a movement expert who can look at your movement and say like, hey, would I be getting this because of this reason? How do I soften up my feet a little bit so I can redistribute some of those pressures? And a PT or a movement specialist might be able to help you sort that out a little bit.
Getting at least more barefoot in your home and starting to walk around and feel your feet and get used to your feet feeling the ground and building up the musculature within your feet without having any pressure or anything on it. There is a foot and ankle, I wasn't even going to say this, but now I'm just thinking about it. There is a foot and ankle plan on Gen Health. So if you want something a little bit deeper to really, start to help your body and start to feel something different.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another PT Pearl here on the Optimal Body Podcast. We love talking about feet, and if you had any interest in getting some of those Vivo Barefoot shoes, make sure you use code TOB15. We'll have that down in the subscription. Hit subscribe, clang the bell over there. It makes us happy, and you will get more information in the future because of it, and we'll see you on the next episode.